At the 2006 BAFTAs, writer and actor Chris Langham had just won Best Comedy Performance for his role in the comedy series The Thick of It, and his sitcom Help, which he co-wrote and starred in alongside Paul Whitehouse, had won Best Comedy Programme. It would seem that Langham, then 57, was enjoying the very peak of a long and prestigious career in comedy. But just 3 days later, he'd make headlines for downloading child pornography. He was sentenced to 10 months in prison in 2007, his reputation ruined. But what were the events that led up to this? What really happened to Chris Langham? Prior to his conviction, Langham had enjoyed a long and successful career as an actor and writer. He'd worked on The Muppets, written sitcoms, and played George Orwell to critical acclaim. By 2006, he was at the top of his game, but his past would soon catch up with him. In 1999, he'd used his credit card details to access a website called European Lolita Sex. That single transaction would eventually land Langham on a list of over 7,000 suspects in what would be Britain's largest investigation into computer crime. Operation Ore was a controversial police investigation that perhaps most famously led to the highly publicised arrest of the Who guitarist Pete Townsend. Ore was a US-led operation that cracked down on internet users who had used their credit card details to access a Texas-based subscription website called Landslide, which offered access to a range of porn sites around the world, some of which hosted child sexual abuse material. Ore attracted criticism for its basis for investigation, which failed to take into consideration stolen credit card details, or whether visitors to the website had even accessed the specific sites that contained illegal material. There are over 30 suicides associated with Operation Ore. The FBI handed over 7,000 names of UK-based Landslide users to the British police. Among those names was Chris Langham's. When Operation Ore reached the news in 2002, Langham made a phone call to the police expressing concerns of alleged spam emails he'd been receiving with links to child pornography websites. Later in court, this phone call would be considered a panicked attempt to cover his tracks. Another 3 years would pass until Langham heard from the police, and in November 2005, his home was raided. Langham was arrested and 3 computers were seized. A total of 15 indecent images and videos of children were found. He was charged a few months later. Throughout his trial, Langham maintained that he had paid and accessed the website for research purposes. He'd been writing the second series of the sitcom Help, which was to feature a peeping Tom character, Pedro, who would, as Langham would claim, slowly be revealed to have been a paedophile. Co-writer Paul Whitehouse was called to give evidence for the prosecution and denied this. He claimed to have had no idea any research of this kind was taking place. Pete Townsend had similarly claimed to have accessed the site for research purposes and had managed to get off with caution. His position was easier to defend. He hadn't downloaded anything. Langham had. 15 images and videos in total, some of which were categorized as level 5, the most extreme of its kind. The youngest victim in one of the videos was 8. A juror vomited when the material was shown in court. During the trial, Langham would reveal his own experience of sexual abuse as a child at the hands of a family friend. He claimed that viewing the material was a way of reaching some kind of understanding of abusers. The prosecuting barrister would dismiss this as a plea for pity. After a 3-week trial, the jury took less than 3 hours to convict Langham of 15 charges of making an indecent photograph of a child. He was sentenced to 10 months and placed on the sex offenders register for 10 years. Despite the judge stating outright that he was satisfied that Langham was not a paedophile, the press instead ran with a quote from a police officer stating the contrary. And during his trial, Langham had also been accused of indecent assault against a young girl who had claimed she was 14 at the time, and the press were quick to run with this story. These allegations were later found to be entirely false, and the jury acquitted Langham of these charges, but the damage to his reputation was done. He served 3 months of his sentence, and on his release from prison, he told the awaiting press, "My life is ruined, but my conscience is clear." He participated in several interviews with the press. It seemed he was determined to clear his name, going as far as undergoing tests by a clinical psychologist to prove that he wasn't a paedophile. But none of this amounted to much. Despite public support from a handful of showbiz friends, including Armando Iannucci, work would be almost non-existent. He starred alongside Simon Amstel in the low-budget black comedy Black Pond, where his performance was praised, but even the positive reviews couldn't shake the controversy of his crimes. He would appear in another independent film the following year, before disappearing entirely from the spotlight. Chris Langham doesn't get talked about much anymore. Episodes of The Muppet Show featuring him have been scrubbed from Disney services, and the sitcom Help, in what surely would have been celebrated as a series featuring a career-defining performance from White House, is now at risk of being entirely forgotten. Langham's family, to which he's very close, have stuck by him all the way, and he's not once wavered on his reasons for doing what he did. In an interview with the Sunday Times, not long after his release, he expressed regret in his arrogance in doing what he did. He maintained that his actions came from a place of empathy and compassion, and talking about the state of his career, he said, "They stripped it all away. Dignity, awards, money, nice car, all the dressing on the tree. When you rip that up, you are left with a little kernel, yourself. You might think that's not much, but it's everything."